I think my juices flow all the time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You know as much as I know.
Right now, we've been able to stuff the stuff.
The curse is broken. NC State fans, finally. Finally.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving.
I mean, that's a triple play.
Wolfpack ain't for soft. It ain't for soft people.
NC State, 2024 ACC champions. Never thought I would live long enough to say those words. Welcome to the Law of the Wolf. My name is Joe Giglio, joined by Wolfpack great Scott Wood. Scott, appreciate you being back in the studio with me.
I feel like it's been forever.
It has.
We've got a lot to talk about.
We do have a lot to talk about. And I know some people up in DC had talked about stuffing the stuff, which Kevin had erroneously said in 2018, learned his lesson. I think we could put NC State shit to bed with this particular ACC title. But then some people were like, well, what about the law? And I was like, the law is different. This only proves the law because remember, there's two parts to the law. It's not only when you expect the most, you get the least, but when you expect the least, you get the most. And my good sir, the career leader in three-pointers at NC State, there was never less expected than at the beginning of this ACC tournament run by NC State. Just your thoughts on the remarkable 5-game stretch of basketball that we saw from this NC State team.
I just think it was a lot of fun to watch. I think, after that Duke game, it kind of sunk in like, wait, we got a chance. Like we've got something cooking here.
Okay. So Duke was the tipping point for you.
Duke for me was it because, Virginia plays a slow-paced game, but I felt like, again, they'd played them well. We've talked about this many times. It's hard to beat a team 3 times. And then you get the next game, whether it's Pitt or Carolina, it's hard to beat a team 3 times. So I just felt like, there was a different feel, even just seeing the buzz around social media, it just started to get real momentum. And I think this roster started to believe, you know what, it doesn't matter about the outside noise. Let's come together as a group, like we're going to talk about, play our role to whatever that is at a maximum level. And it came together at the right time.
I am glad that you brought up the third game. I kept mentioning that in the last week during in DC. Syracuse, a third game. Virginia, a third game. Carolina, a third game. That's what the ACC used to be. It used to be a round robin. You played everybody home and away. Then you got to the ACC tournament, and there were no secrets.
Yeah,
the man who ran corner, everybody knew what was going on when Mark did this, right? I mean, everybody, and that's fine. But that's how every game was at the ACC tournament before the first wave of expansion there in 2004. So that old school basketball took me back. The way that State played, I thought, was old school too. And it brought me back to how we began this year. And we tried to map out, like, how can NC State be a successful team this year? And we talked often about, well, they have DJ Burns. That's a guy who, as we saw at the end of last year, and for most of the ACC schedule last year, was a guy they punched it in. You could get a basket. He's a great passer. The offense can run through him. Mm-hmm. That can be difficult, though, with a big man. It also can be difficult with some of the extra weight that he was carrying around. And he's certainly struggled during the regular season through parts of it. But I thought DJ Burns, obviously as the MVP of this tournament, and I voted for him as the MVP of this tournament, I thought that was some old school basketball. Punch it in. There ain't no better way to end a drought other than to have you wide open on the wing. There ain't no better way to end a scoring drought and to kill momentum than to throw the ball into a big man and have him just demoralize you the way that DJ Burns was able to demoralize his opponents.
Well, and I think demoralize is the word to use. I mean, Armando Bacot is not a small guy.
No.
I can't think of the guy's name. The guy from Virginia is not a small guy. Filipkowski, may not be as strong as the other two, but he's still a big guy. And the way that DJ can just take a catch from the 3-point line, he takes not only an arm bar, but he's getting a second hand on him half the time.
The second hand bothers me because you're not supposed to use the second hand.
No, at all. And that's again, that's another topic we can talk about. And it's just too much shoulder action. It's just, again, another topic for another day. But the way he just backs down, and in the back of all three of those guys' minds, it's like, when am I going to get a little bit of help? Because there's really nothing you can do. And he's so good at getting you off balance. And when you're putting so much weight on their back,
then
and he just kind of spins, he gets you off balance. So then you can't really contest the shot. So again, just kudos to him, just being patient. I mean, it'd take him 6 seconds sometime to maybe 7 seconds to get a shot off. But again, he just demoralized defenses because they just put guys out on island the whole time.
Let me be as loud as a praiser as I was critical of him in getting NC State to the point where they were heading into this tournament where, quite frankly, Kevin was coaching for his job. I mean, this is not, that's what the situation was.
Yeah.
Okay. And they had lost the 4 games in a row going into this tournament. The season was in a downward spiral. And I had assigned a good chunk of that to DJ not being able to consistently deliver at a level that we know he's capable of delivering at. And part of that is being in the shape that he's in.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's a fair criticism. But the way that he was able to sustain in 5 games over 5 days, like, you have to tip your hat to him for that.
Yeah.
It would have been very easy for him on the 5th day to just be like, I'm spent. Even on the 4th day.
Yeah.
I'm spent. I've got nothing left. And he continued to find the juice. He continued to find the energy. He continued to find the ability to finish. I think that's what's really important. And David Glenn was sitting next to me on press round. I said to him, I go, does anybody ever have as few points as DJ Burns in a game when you look up and you're like, does that guy have like 30? And it turned, like, the Virginia game is a great example. I thought he was the best player on the floor. He was the difference in the game, all of those things. He had 19 points in that game.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting here going, how is it even possible? He's been completely dominant. Other than the Louisville game where he played 11 minutes, and there was reasons for that, but even then he scored 12 and 11. He plays 24 minutes. We're talking all the sweet spots here, by the way. 24 Syracuse, 26 Duke, 24 UVA, and then a little bit more burn against Carolina with 28, because I feel like it wasn't exactly an up and down game. 20 against the Heels, 19 points against UVA, 10 against Duke, 15 against Syracuse, and 12 in only the 11 minutes. Like, his dosage and his usage was almost perfect. It was perfectly played by Kevin.
Yeah, and I spent most of the day with Levi, and I actually told him I disagreed with him on Sunday. I thought they moved him more. It was the first time that even on the perimeter I would see him, go for a DHO, dribble handoff action to the side, just more so. And I felt like it was able to get other guys getting more touches and feeling somewhat involved. And I think part of that went a long way throughout the tournament, that everybody kind of felt involved. I've always said you get more out of guys when you just give them a touch. It doesn't mean they have to shoot it, but make them feel involved on the offensive end. And I thought they moved pieces around at the right times in this 5-game stretch, more so probably down the stretch where they were on that losing streak.
I wanted to start with DJ Burns because I felt it was important that we point out what he did. Let's talk a little bit about Kevin, because I feel like the situation that he was in, and even on Tuesday, the Louisville game, the start of that game, and I had people mad at me because I tweeted, like, I don't understand, like, why they're playing this way, and they're going to fight back in the second half.
Yeah,
but it's like, why are you starting this way? And the situation that Kevin was in, and the team was in, and the program was in, I thought they got out. I thought he worked his way out of this in the only way you can, and that is by ignoring everything and just working.
Yeah.
And I thought the usage of DJ Burns was really important. That only works, though, if Ben Middlebrooks and Mo Diarra play the way that they did. That's the only way it works. And I can't say enough good things about Mo Diarra and the energy that he played with. You're going to see him be a centerpiece of this team next season.
Yeah.
Ben Middlebrooks, same thing. The role he'll play next year will only expand. But to understand and accept what you have to do to help the team win, and we'll get into more of that with Casey Morsell. I thought Kevin, there were times this year, the Notre Dame game in particular, the Clemson game in particular, the wins, where I thought, wow, he pushed the right buttons with those guys. And then there's other games, there's only so much you can do with DJ defensively.
Yeah.
Burns. So, that's an inherent challenge of this roster. But I thought all of the buttons were pushed, right down to using the timeout at the 5-minute mark of the second half, knowing you're going to get another rest with the under 4. Little things like that. Bringing DJ Horn, even when he was healthy, off the bench, then starting him against Carolina, knowing you would need more offense to trade paint with them. These are all coaching moves. Those are all coaching decisions. And I thought Kevin, obviously it's his best work, but I thought he just tuned everybody out and said, fine, whatever you think about me, you think about me, but here's what I'm going to try to do to put us in a position to win. And obviously all of those moves added up. Yeah.
And I think what even looking back on it, they bought time with DJ Horn and DJ Burns on the bench. They bought almost 3 to 4 minutes of time. I think they were up 4, and when they came back in, they were still up 4.
Yes.
That's when Carolina has to make the run. When you have 2 of your best players, focal points on the bench, and you don't make a run. But I think that just shows all of those players stepped up in some type of shape or fashion and made it a much smoother transition when, again, things aren't going your way. DJ Horn picks up his 4th. DJ's got to get a quick breather, and they buy those minutes, which I thought was critical in that game.
Also thought that was coaching, and I get it. You're desperate, but he picks up his 4th foul at 12 minutes, and I even tweeted, I'm like, uh-oh, here it comes. Here comes the RJ Davis run. Here comes the rest. And he only sat on the bench for 2 minutes. Kevin got him back in, told him, listen, play the way that you've been playing. And we can hit a little bit of officiating here. I like the way that the games were officiated in DC. They let them play. And while you could have blown the whistle every single time in the Virginia game, I don't mind that they didn't, because you don't want it the other way. You know what I mean?
All officials suck, but that's okay.
I know that is your stance, but I appreciated there was a consistency to how the games were called. Whether you agreed with all of the calls or not, there was a consistency in the way that they were letting the guys play.
I would agree. I could get nitpicky because I think of 3 of them in the Carolina game. The first non-block charge call on Casey and RJ, and then they had 2 more.
Well, the DJ's 3rd was not great.
They had 2 more after that.
But I'm specifically saying with Burns, I don't want to see flops. I don't want to see all this other stuff. I thought for the most part, they said, you can use that second hand and you can come in on him, but we're not going to rescue you with a flop.
As long as they listen, and I think that's to DJ's advantage. If they want to play 2 hands, he can still get a bucket. As long as they're not double teaming. As long as you let DJ do it on the other end, that helps him as well.
That's going to help him.
So, again, I don't think the officiating was bad. I mean, if you go back and watch, you can always say, oh, this call, that call. But truly what it came down to was State was the better team each night, and they hit the right buttons at the right time to win basketball games. Now, does it take a little bit of luck and a big-time shot?
We'll get to that.
Yes, but you got to have it to win a championship.
We'll get to that right after these words from our friends let's start with Hometown Realty, because we were up in D.C. for the ACC tournament, and the only way we were able to do that is because of Barry Woodard and his crew at Hometown Realty. It's myhtr.com. Look, you might think you can sell your house on your own. You might think, oh, I watched a Netflix documentary, or I Googled how to sell my house. You're not going to maximize your profits. Use the experts. Go with Hometown Realty. It's myhtr.com, or you can call them 919-550-7355 to get to maximize your profits in all, you're getting ready for the frenzy. Do yourself a favor. myhtr.com, buy, sell, calculate. Of course, no one was happier than Josh Whitaker. Big State fan. Yes, there are lawyers that are State fans. Josh Whitaker, Joe Hamer. Catch them at wh.lawyer. You're telling me there's a better URL out there anywhere than wh.lawyer? There is not, sir. There is not. And then you know who the OG is. Hayes Lancaster, Mosquito Authority, Pest Authority. Go to bugsbite.com. Hayes does not believe in contracts, but he does believe in saving you money. Bugs inside the house, mice in the attic, moisture under your house, termites. I got termite traps outside my house. You name it, they can handle it. They can get rid of them. Mosquito Authority, Pest Authority, big shouts to Hayes. I know he was also thrilled to see the big win for the Wolfpack. All right, we got one more, because I like to knock all these out at the same time, and that's Breeze Through. Breeze Through is doing something really cool, Scott. Thursday, we're doing the OG Live at the Longleaf Swine. If you're in town, come on over. I'll take care of you. Scott Wood. But
just to clarify,
you should also come over to the Long Leaf Swine because Breeze Through has not only 4 tickets to give away to the Hurricanes game on Sunday, Canes Leafs Sunday at 6. They have the Breeze Through Freeze Crew. If you've been to a Canes game this year, you'll note when they don't call it a Zamboni, but when the Zamboni comes out and cleans the ice, you can ride. It's called an Olympia machine. You can ride on the Olympia machine and get a blanket and shirt from the Breeze Through Freeze Crew. They do such a great job over there. Home base, obviously, right there behind PNC Arena. Dark roast coffee. Your tailgate needs. You want to go celebrate. You want to have fun. You need to be awake for that 9:30 start on Thursday. Breeze Through. But yes, come to the Long Leaf Swan 1 o'clock this Thursday, and you can win those tickets to the Canes and Maple Leafs game. So big shouts to Breeze Through. All right, Scott. And of course, scottwood.com. Scottwood15.com. Are you in the market for a mortgage? Well, go to scottwood15.com. Scott, I just mentioned there's a frenzy coming in the selling portion or buying portion. But what's the best way to have kind of a conversation and figure out, well, what can I actually afford when I'm looking to buy a house?
That'd be have a conversation with me. I know most realtors, again, the industry's a little backwards. You probably want to come to me first so that we can find out what you're qualified for. So then you can take that number to your realtor to then look at homes. So would love to spark up that conversation and help anybody that's out there.
Okay. So that's scottwood15.com. Okay, let's talk a little bit more basketball before we get into the NIL portion of what NC State kind of needs to do going forward to capitalize on what they did this week in DC. What was your reaction to Michael O'Connell's three-pointer against Virginia? I have an idea, but I'm curious from the shooter. What did you think of Michael O'Connell's three that sent the game into overtime against Virginia?
So the honest truth is, I got up and started walking to the bathroom while Virginia was shooting the free throw.
Okay.
And I heard on the way there that it was a miss. And I knew it was 1-1 or whatever it was. So I started to come back. And next thing I know, Tony Ann's screaming at the top of her lungs. So I caught the back end of it. I was going to the restroom. I'm like, oh, this is over. But then came back, saw it. But again, it's just one of those things that, I had a conversation the other day. It's probably not the biggest shot in NC State history, but it might be the second biggest shot in NC State history. You got another one?
No, I'm saying it's definitely the biggest since they won it on the dunk, for
without
sure.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
Not even close.
The air ball.
It's not even close. I guess BJ Anya in the tournament itself, but this was this was to put them into the championship game.
Yeah, well, and I think the meaning of what ended up happening,
there you go,
makes it that much bigger.
At some point, you said the Duke game is when you, as a fan, as a former player, were watching and thinking they have a chance. I think it was that shot that gave them the confidence to say, we are not going home. I don't care if Carolina's the next team or not.
Yeah.
Because you have to have that confidence to overcome Carolina. And I thought that shot by Michael O'Connell. Now, so if you haven't seen it, I can try to splice it in here. My reaction was I stood up. I was in complete disbelief. Like, I was trying to look around back at the scorer's table to see if I could find a replay to see if it was real.
Yeah.
And to see if they were going to try to disallow it. Did he step out of bounds? I was just kind of and I'm still in shock on Tuesday, March 19th that the shot went in. Because let's be real. In the last 40 years, that shot's not gone in. Nothing has gone NC State. Not a play like that has gone NC State's way.
Yeah. It took about 37 years for it to come down, too.
My second reaction of asking you, the shooter, was you would have been mad because he banked it in.
Well, it was a terrible shot. Yes. I mean, it was, listen,
I know you.
He could go there, no defense, and try to mimic the arc that was on that shot. And I'm seeing people saying, oh, it hit the Jumbotron. That thing was a moonshot. It almost looked like he punted it. It landed above the top of the square too. But hey, man, sometimes you gotta get lucky, man.
That actually leads us to one of my favorite sidebars. You were on the team that lost to Chandler Parsons. What did you do the next day? So Chandler Parsons, NC State loses. Farnell DeGan misses a free throw, kind of like Virginia did. Chandler Parsons takes one dribble from the opposing foul line and he hoists up a 3-pointer, and Florida ends up beating NC State on just a ridiculous shot.
Yeah.
So Scott Wood, you were on that state team. What did you do the next day?
We all went out and we tried to mimic it from the same spot, mimic it. And listen, I could make it from anywhere on the court.
Right.
Okay. We could not do it one time. Not one time. We probably wasted an hour just shooting it. And not one person on the team could make it.
That's
not
amazing.
one.
It's one of my favorite stories. I thought Michael O'Connell, listen, when they added him from Stanford, and I remember having the conversation with Kevin this summer about him, it was obviously he's a point guard. He's a pass first point guard. He's an older player. He's going to play smart. But we do not expect him to come in here and average 12 points a game.
Yeah.
That will not be his job. Last year, the point guard was Jarkel Joyner. And Jarkel was a playmaker, was a scorer, was everything. What they wanted from O'Connell was to be a steady hand, to be a good defender, and to not make mistakes. I think for the most part this year, he did that.
Yeah.
In DC, he became something else.
Yeah.
In the first 31 games of the year, he had 3 games where he scored in double digits. 31 games, 3 in double digits. In DC, 5 games, 5 in double digits. Statistically, that makes no sense. The first 31 games of the season, 14 of 49 from the 3-point line. That's 28.6%. In DC, 9 of 16 in those 5 games. That's 56.3%. So none of that makes any sense to me other than
Spalding ball.
Oh, you think that's it?
I'm just saying. I'm telling you, as soon as no one in the ACC uses a Spalding ball.
Not anymore, yeah.
Not one team uses Spalding ball, but apparently.
And Spalding is what the NBA uses.
Somebody ponied up a whole lot of money to have the Spalding ball in the ACC, but for some reason, as soon as you touch that ball, it's just like magic. It's like it's got a radar on the goal.
You always shot well in the ACC.
Always shot well with that ball. So I'm telling you, there's magic in that Spalding ball.
So O'Connell scoring the way that he did, he hits the shot. Ethan Hyman got an amazing picture of it. That's going to be up on the wall here soon. And the alpha and the omega is the drunk from the South Carolina football game where the 3 fans are just completely dejected and the one guy is being consoled by it. It's at the beginning and the end of the Law of the Wolf podcast. That one. The alpha and the omega, the O'Connell shot's going up on the wall because that's it. Like that's the moment where you go, okay, it's real.
I just want to see the people in the background too. That would be like seeing Kevin.
Yes.
I haven't looked at Kevin's reaction or anybody's reaction when that ball's in the air. I would just love to go back and watch
I had
it.
the anti Jay Wright reaction to the bang. Like I stood up and I was like I couldn't even believe it. What was happening? So Michael O'Connell playing the way that he did, again, you can start a season thinking, here's what I want my team to be. Here's what I want. Here are the roles I'm going to try to give my players. But ultimately, it's incumbent upon those players to play at their best. And for whatever reason, it all worked in DC. And I also want to give credit to Casey Morsell. In the game that DJ Horton didn't play against Louisville, he scored 25 points. They needed all 25 of them, particularly after that start. He kept them in that thing in the first half,
yeah,
for sure. Then his defense against RJ Davis in the second half in particular, when I really expected Davis to take over and Carolina to win the game, was amazing.
Yeah,
was amazing. So you have a guy like Casey who had it. Again, we've pointed this out. Casey had a tough year. It was an adjustment for him not having Jarkel, not having Terquavion Smith. His role and the way that he had to play this year changed. And for him to make the adjustments that he did in DC at the end of his career, it's remarkable.
I mean, and you could go down the list. I mean, Ben Middlebrooks, Mo Diarra. I mean, every single one of them played at a much, much higher level than they even did in the regular season. And they did it at the perfect time of the year when it's all about who's getting hot. And I think, looking back to Michael O'Connell, I think had 16 in that first game against Louisville as well.
Mm-hmm.
Those little things give you confidence. And then you just start to build on it and build on it. And again, I just think that there was a belief after those, first 2-3 games that, hey, why not us? We can legit get this done. There's not, in this landscape of college basketball, nobody is unbeatable. The playing field is somewhat even. Now,
Yes.
that's why I think,
we'll get into that.
That's why I think that just the confidence and who's hot at the right times matters so much more than what it may have been in the past when you have very top heavy teams and you're not going to see, those 12, 13, 14 seeded teams in the tournament really advance like they are now because of the portal and NIL and all this other stuff.
You said the words, why not us? That was DJ Horn's refrain for why not the Wolfpack in DC. 29 points against Carolina. He missed the Louisville game with the hip injury. Comes back. I thought he was really good against Duke, in particular with 18. Struggled against Reese Beekman in Virginia. Straight up. Struggled with him. And had 8 points. Didn't pout. Didn't worry. Kevin could have easily said, hey, we haven't been starting you. We're not going to, it's not your time. I thought, again, nice coaching move. And even on the text thread, why are they starting Ward? Well, they need his offense.
Yeah.
That's why. And he delivers against Carolina. Goes 2 for 6 from 3, 9 of 15 from the floor. I thought 9 of 11 from the free throw line was also big. There was no hope at the end of that game when Carolina started fouling. Like State never gave them a glimmer of hope in the final 3 or 4 minutes of that game. And Casey Morsell with the big shot. But DJ Horn, the bus driver, I thought it was a nice combination in the tournament. It wasn't just, as we've seen at the end of the regular season, everybody waiting around for DJ Horn to score a bunch of points.
Yeah.
Now, he did that in support in the Carolina game, but it was in the structure of all those other things that had already been working, namely DJ Burns. So, again, basketball-wise, truly an amazing 5-game performance. To beat the teams that they did, I've pointed this out before, but that's the Champions Club. Louisville, Syracuse, Duke, Virginia, Carolina are all of the other programs in the ACC, not named NC State, who have won the national championship. They beat them all. To beat Duke, Virginia, and Carolina, the 3 teams in particular who have run this league for the last 10 years, also remarkable. And then to beat Carolina for the first time in the tournament since, heck, I don't even know the last time they beat, maybe even 87 might be the last time they beat Carolina in the ACC tournament. It's been a minute. That itself was to vanquish them. So let's talk a little bit now about what NC State needs to do to build off of this, Scott, and what they can do going forward, because you don't want this to be a one-off situation. So let's start at the top. Kevin gets an automatic 2-year extension for winning the ACC tournament, winning the ACC title. He gets a raise. So that puts his contract through 2030. We had talked, our conversations, but I'll share this with you. Our conversations at the end of the regular season were like, you were very adamant. You did not think a change was going to come unless they lost out. They were on a path to lose out. And like I said, I think they got to DC in that Louisville game. It was in play.
Yeah.
But ultimately, our conversations were from not only a financial equation, but from an administrative. Their conversations have not been the same of what the fan conversations have been. It's been different.
Yep.
Okay. So now Kevin's contract's in place. So now the staff changes that they made in 22, you and I both agree, Levi Watkins was a huge, not only because he's a State guy, but he's also a hell of a recruiter and understands how to identify some players that Kentucky, these other guys aren't going after. I think Joel Justice is another guy who you bring in who was at Kentucky, but has been on some of these big game hunter programs. You can't just ignore the big players, right?
Yeah.
You have to be in on the mix a little bit. Kareem Richardson, a former head coach, was with Kevin at Louisville. I thought another guy, you need, as a head coach, you need someone who you can look over to, who knows what you're going through and that you can have conversations with and maybe can say no to you.
Yeah.
I think Levi's not going to do that. And Joel's not going to do that. That's not really what their roles are. So I think Kareem deserves a lot of credit too. When you look at it and you go, well, who's over there that's going to tell you no, or this is not a good idea? And I think Kareem has that.
Yeah.
So I think the staff, again, that's a credit to Boo, that they made those changes in 22. They went to Kevin and said, well, we're going to make changes. How do we help you? And I think now Kevin has to go back to them and say, all right, here's what's going on at Carolina. Here's what's going on at Duke. And here's what we have to do to be competitive moving forward in name, image, and likeness in the transfer portal. And I think having a general manager is probably that has to be the first step for the program.
Yeah. Well, and I when I was involved over a year ago now, it feels like the one thing I'd always get was, why would I give? We don't win any championships. We don't do this. We don't do that. Well, now what is your excuse? You've seen that even in a limited fashion of giving, that you can win a ACC championship. Again, I think the level field, the playing field is so much more level because of NIL, because of the transfer portal. And I think the hard part is at the end of the day, you have to trust that Levi and Joel are going to bring in the right guys and Kevin's going to bring in the right guys, but they got to participate. And if you're not participating, guess what? It's only going to piss off Carolina more and Duke more that all of a sudden State's win an ACC tournament. Guess what they're going to do? Duke's bringing in arguably the greatest freshman class in basketball history. So they're going to get pissed and they're going to start throwing even more money at the wall until it sticks.
So I saw a lot of different college basketball people in DC. And I think NIL, a lot of people don't understand. State's NIL budget this year was a little bit more than $1 million. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds pretty good, but really it's at the bottom third of the ACC. That's the truth of it. Right. So to your point, they were able to win this year in spite of kind of their standing in NIL. Duke is spending 4 times that. Carolina is spending 4 times that. And they each have specific general managers. That's where I mean in terms of the structure, not going out and asking for money. You have to have a point of contact so that when a recruit comes to campus, even out of the portal, they come to campus, you are very specific to them. Here's what we're going to do. Here is our offer. Because that's what Duke does. That's what Carolina does. That's what Louisville's about to do. Louisville's about to be a major player in all this. Miami has, as we saw in the Final Four last year, a major player in this. So it's not just the money part of it, it's the structure part of it as well. To answer a question from you and I had during the regular season, like, why don't they have Rob Dillingham? Rob Dillingham basically made the equivalent of their whole payroll this year. Think about that.
Yeah.
Like a 5-star recruit who's being pursued by Kentucky, being pursued by Duke and Carolina and everybody else. That's the price of poker. I'm not saying NC State has to pay somebody $1 million to play basketball for them. That's not what I'm saying. I think you can be competitive probably in the $2 to $3 million range. You can be. But now all of a sudden you got to hit every home run, which is putting a lot of pressure on you to make sure. As someone else explained to me before the game, because we had a conversation on the OG about Hunter Salas. Well, Hunter Salas was worth 3 players that including DJ Horn, that NC State, Jaden Teller, DJ Horn, and I think Cam Woods was the other. And it was like, would you rather have 3 players or 1? That's, I think, what NC State has to consider moving forward. That's the other part of it. You can have more money, but would you rather concentrate and pay 3 or 4 players a lot, or do what they did this year? And I think it was 8 guys on the payroll basically this year.
Yeah.
That's the part I think you have to work through. What are your best decisions? And I think that's where the general manager portion of this comes through. I mean, at the risk of nominating you for a job, I would love to see you be that person.
Well, I appreciate it. I would tell you, I would probably err on the side of trying to find, a balance like this year. Now, I think you always have to have one eye on the Robert Dillinghams, maybe the local kid that is a big time recruit that grew up a State fan. It's like, all right, we may have to pony up a little bit more for this one. But I do think there is, I think a little bit of luck with DJ Horn being local. I mean, I think he would probably demand more money if he wasn't coming back home. So again, I think that just is what it kind of comes down to. But I've always just been a big fan. I said it from the beginning of the year. I said, I have no idea if they make tournament, but it's probably my favorite Kevin Keatts roster that he's constructed from top to bottom. It's a group of guys that, hey, I can get 20 out of Casey. I can get the 16 against Louisville out of Michael O'Connell. Did they give it the things that I thought we would get during the whole regular season? No. but then you started to see it come to fruition in the ACC tournament.
And that's what I had talked to Kevin yesterday, Monday, and I said, why did this thing come together the way that it did? And he said, it goes back to our conversation about playing a team a third time, or even a second time in the case of Duke, in a span of 8 days. He said, all we did was take clips from the previous matchups and said to them, Syracuse in particular, if you don't have this defensive lapse, if you play this way, you eliminate that, we win the game.
Yeah. That's
what they did. Each step of the way. Think about it. You're seeing Syracuse for the third time. You can sit there before that game and show them, here's 4 possessions. If we clean up these 4 possessions defensively, we win.
Yeah.
Duke, who you just saw in Raleigh, if we don't give up 14 offensive rebounds in the first half of the basketball game, this is where we can be. And I thought there was a concerted effort there, to the point that in that game, I'm sitting behind the Duke bench, and Shire called a timeout in the middle of the first half of that game and absolutely lit the team up. Coach K would have been proud of him with all the words that he was using, and it was specifically about rebounding effort.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, you could see it. After he said it to me, you could piece it together. Same thing with the Carolina game. Think about how great they played in the first half in Chapel Hill. You don't have to fix anything there. But the second half, think about the way that they played defense in the second half of that game on Saturday night. It was night and day. And a lot of times it is just 1 or 2 possessions that can change a game, especially when you have the guys rolling the way that they do on offense. All right, we've gone long enough on the ACC tournament and a little bit about NIL. Let's talk a little bit about the NCAA tournament. Your final 2 years as a player, you were lucky enough to play in this thing twice. As your former coach liked to say, it is the greatest show on earth. What is it like to play in the NCAA tournament? What's it like to hear that CBS music and be out there and know that you're one of the guys in the greatest show on earth?
Yeah, I mean, the lights seem a little bit brighter. You know, I kind of joke because I always say, I remember the per diem, dude. The per diem was just so much fatter than the regular season.
What was it?
I don't even remember.
Are we talking like $20 or are we talking like $40?
It was a good amount. I remember getting like $240 or something for, just a couple of days. It was just so much more than what it was.
So you would get, so explain to people who don't understand, like when you guys go on the road for a game against Pitt on the road, you get meal money.
Yes.
And it's it was probably like $20 or $30.
Yes,
or
but it all adds. So like if you're there for 3 days,
you get $30 per day.
Yes. So
okay.
In a roundabout way, I was probably getting paid the exact same because I remember we'd get off the bus on a regular season game and you'd get like $40
because it's like a day and night.
Yes. So you're gone. So all of a sudden I'm seeing all this money. I'm like, oh man, we're making money now.
But all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to go to the cash. I'm going to go to the convenience store, get a hot dog and pocket the rest of this.
Exactly. So I joked that I remember that, but just the opportunity again. I think you think of, the 83 championship team, there's so much history at stake and you just want to have your name imprinted somewhere. And you've worked all season. Like you think back to the summer workouts when you're in there for 2 hours, just absolutely dying, feeling like you're going to throw up and pass out. You get in trouble and someone's late for practice and we're rolling on the lawn. And then we break out in hives because they just sprayed it with pesticides. Like you think back to all those moments. You're like, we're here. This is what you battle for. You think about your class, the kids you came into with. So there's nothing like it. I think, they're running off of a high now. And I think the momentum that they have, I hope that it continues on against Texas Tech, who's a solid basketball team. I haven't been able to look at them much. They've got a 7-footer that I haven't watched them play in person, but very guard heavy when it comes to scoring. So it'll be an interesting matchup for them, but hopefully they can pull it out.
5.5-point dog on Thursday. It's the late game. I don't like playing the late games. I do like that they're in Pittsburgh. Just like they had mojo in DC. They have mojo in Pittsburgh. 2015, they beat LSU. Speaking of memorable shots, BJ Anya with the left-handed hook
that
to
11
beat
seed,
LSU.
That 11 seed's always been friendly.
11, that was your first team in 12.
Yep.
You come out of Columbus with the wins over San Diego State and Georgetown. So I listen, they're going to see Kentucky. I'll just say it. I feel like they're going to lose to Kentucky, but I like their chances in this first game. I think Texas Tech they're going to defend.
Yeah.
Like all get out. They're an athletic team. But I like the mojo that
Very
State's
Ole
got.
Miss vibes.
Yeah, I mean Chris Beard, Grant McCaslin, defense. Like he's a defense first kind of coach. But I think again, if you can you don't have to build and get better every time, but if you play, as I like to call it now, the Giglio scale, a desperation, you got to have that urgency and hunger. And those three things were in spades after the first half of the Louisville game in DC. And during the regular season, when they were struggling, I felt like that urgency was lacking. And now you see them playing with that urgency, playing with that concentration and adherence to the scouting report, and really just all the parts coming together the way that they have. Who knows what they do? The only other team to win 5 games in 5 days was UConn, who also happened to win the national championship that same year. We'll see. We'll see. Dream a dream. Dream a dream. All I know, 2024 ACC champions is NC State. So hit the subscribe button. Hit the like. State's playing Thursday. We're going to do a late night OG. Would you like to be on live with us on Thursday night?
It's a 9:30 game.
It's probably going to be a midnight, a true after dark experience.
I'll be a game time decision.
I'll let you ponder.
Game time decision.
I'll let you ponder. If the road does end this weekend, we'll be back. We'll wrap it up. And if it continues, we'll be back and we'll talk some more about NC State basketball going forward. Appreciate everyone for listening and supporting us here on Law of the Wolf. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and rate on Apple and Spotify. 5 stars only, positive vibes only. We'll see you guys next week.
Wolfpack ain't for soft. It ain't for soft people.